Ladies and gentlemen, a few years ago when the Kinsey report on men came out, I remember sitting on one of the buses in New York City, and a lady next to me was reading it with great interest. I couldn't help but nudge her and say, "Tell me, what do you think of the Kinsey report?" She said, "Well, it has no plot but plenty action." But you're going to find that the Kinsey report has a great deal of plot. And tonight, that's what I would like to do, unravel what the plot is. Not just the statistics. I don't wish to rehash for you what you may have already read about certain statistical findings about what sex activity is among women or men. And tonight, I am going to combine the findings of Kinsey on both men and women and show what you can learn from them. We might ask, of course, what is the value of the Kinsey report? The great, great value, and I hope you will never forget it, is not in his statistics at all. And I hope you will not ask me, do you believe that his findings of 26% of those who are having extramarital relationships is valid? I don't think it is. I don't come into that. I don't behave like that. I don't think it's important whether it's 26% or 50% or 6.3 or 6.9%. The great value of the Kinsey report, ladies and gentlemen, is that it has taken sex out of the cellar, out of the darkness, and it has brought it out into the open where we can sit down and discuss it intelligently, where all at once a little sunshine can fall, where heretofore a great mass of dark ignorance has existed. And if it can make a subject so important as sex functioning and sex habits in human beings talked about, at least then we may come to some conclusions that perhaps we never could have had in any other way. And I believe that Kinsey will go down as a saint in history for having made that one single contribution. It is really very unimportant how valid or how correct or whether you believe in his particular statistical interpretations or research. As far as we're concerned, the fact that we can talk about it, that I can stand here now before you and bring up such items as masturbation, extramarital relationships, premarital relationships, petting, homosexuality, and discuss it honestly and fearlessly is immediately a great, great thing. Now, please remember that Kinsey and his group are scientists. They're not legislators. They're not sociologists. They're not telling you what is right or what is wrong. They are merely saying, let us see what is happening. What is going on? What are human beings really doing in their sex behavior? Not what we think should be, not what we say should be, but what is happening. And then after presenting these facts as scientists, after all, they're only facts, and it has been a very, very upsetting thing to find certain vested groups who begin to condemn Kinsey's findings because they deal with sex. It's like condemning a certain fact about a fruit fly. But if it exists, it exists. Kinsey then says, here, educators, sociologists, doctors, teachers, mothers, fathers, here are the facts. Here is what is happening. Stop being an ostrich. This is what is going on. Now, will you, educators, will you, mothers, fathers, teachers, doctors, set up a program now that is intelligent and realistic and that faces the facts as they are? This is the only thing Kinsey is really saying. He is not saying do this or do that, or because this is so, everybody should do this. He is merely presenting what is, gives you the truth. The amount of ignorance about sex is fantastic, simply fantastic. And as a matter of fact, every one of you sitting here tonight is too old for this program. You should have been here when you were 10, 11, 12. You are much too old right now, because you're going to find in a few minutes that your attitudes about sex and your particular outlook about it has been formed a long, long time ago. And it is amazing how we think and believe certain things about sex. Now, listen to these figures. These are not Kinsey's, but they're nevertheless very accurate. 98% of all people in America are sexual cripples. That's right, 98%. There are very few people who are those artists of life who can live with and enjoy sex as God meant him to. Most of us struggle and suffer under sex like a donkey under a burden. And if the animals in the forest could see how we behave and how we think and how we feel about sex life, they would sit down and chatter and laugh and bemoan how sick these poor human beings must be. Our minds are filled with lies, distortions, stupid beliefs, and things that crush us in our particular attempt to adjust sexually. Would you believe it if I tell you, and this is true, so help me, this is true. A 46-year-old married man stopped me when I was giving this talk, and he said to me, you know, you should have explained your terms. He said, I always thought the difference between autosexual and homosexual was that autosexual means you do it in an auto, and homosexual you do it at home. Notice, ladies and gentlemen, how many sex cripples we have. When the moment we begin to talk about sex, how some people shrivel up and they begin to become embarrassed and upset. And they feel themselves going, little butterflies floating around. They feel they'd like to cover themselves with a mask and sit and listen, with a little mask. Notice how even the schools, how blind they have made themselves. They think if they take a statue and put a fig leaf on it, there's nothing underneath the fig leaf. But believe me, everything is still there as it was before. If you don't believe it, take a look under the fig leaf next time and see. And this is the great fig leaf delusion that if you do not speak about something, then it doesn't exist at all. No wonder one woman said to me, she said, do you realize what the percentage of sex maniacs is? It is 1 out of every man. The word sex to most people is a synonym for dirt. A dirty thing is what sex generally represents to them. And if you saw that magnificent movie, Moulin Rouge, I was so impressed with that scene where a woman comes into the gallery and looks at one of Toulouse-Lautrec's paintings. And she says, the portrait showed a lady with a man standing there and in a state of undress. And she looked at the pictures, what a disgusting picture. Just look at that woman undressing in her bedroom with a man standing there. What a disgusting, dirty picture. When Toulouse-Lautrec came over to her and said, Madam, this woman is not undressing, she is dressing. The man standing there is her husband. He is waiting to take her to their son's 25th anniversary party. You will do me a great service if you will not let your dirty mind look at my lovely paintings. And this is exactly what we have in this whole area of sex. Let us take a look tonight at reality. If you are squeamish about hearing the truth about sex practices, I suggest that you lift yourself right up now and go home and turn on Howdy Doody. Let's take the first question. At what age does sex activity begin? Of course, most people think it begins when you get to be about 92 or so, according to the educational system. But it may interest you to learn that Kinsey reports that sex activity begins in infancy. And as a matter of fact, this confirms for the first time on a mass basis the thesis of Dr. Sigmund Freud, who is the founder of psychoanalysis, that sex life begins virtually at birth. And Kinsey, in fact, reports that a complete orgasm. Now, do you know what I mean by an orgasm? You will forgive me if I define each word as I go along. I assume nothing anymore. Since that autosexual, homosexual, I insist on explaining everything. As a matter of fact, in one of my college classes, I once was talking about an orgasm, and it occurred to me maybe somebody didn't know what it meant. So I said, how many of you do not know what I mean by orgasm? Well, nobody raised his hand. I said, how many of you do know? Nobody raised his hand. An orgasm, ladies and gentlemen, refers to the sexual climax. It refers to the discharge that one feels after accumulation of sexual tensions. And the discharge or the release of the entire sexual feeling is spoken of as an orgasm. The closest thing I know that physically to it is a sneeze. Do you ever feel a sneeze tickle and suddenly... But do you ever know how it feels when you can't sneeze and you want to? Look how much trouble we can get from a little sneeze here, huh? Well, Kinsey reports that a complete orgasm, now listen, a complete orgasm, except for ejaculation, has been observed in a 5-month-old male infant. I can just see the mother looking at him and saying, just like his father. It has also been observed a complete orgasm in a girl infant of only 4 months. Not like her mother at all, you say. Pre-adolescents, that is, children who are under 12 years old, before 12 years old, have a capacity for frequency of sex orgasm that is greater than most adults. And one boy, less than 12, was observed to experience 26 orgasms within 24 hours when sexually aroused. That's a little thing to reckon with. As a society, ladies and gentlemen, we are trying hardest to regulate the sex behavior of young people.